This movie is one of the worst I have ever seen.
Whoa. He must have seen some terrible films.
No, he hasn't seen anything. This is it. This is the bar. It's the best and the worst.
It was so boring at times, and the fact that they're British doesn't help.
Oh, no.
Can you be racist to British people?
I think it's called xenophobic.
Yeah.
There we go.
I did laugh in a couple of parts, but I think it was pure luck on the writer's part.
Pure luck.
I mean, blind squirrel finds a nut, right? Yeah.
Broke a clock's right twice a day.
There it is. Do it.
That was a 1-star review from IMDb. Hello and welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films. I'm Ryan, joined as always by Andrew.
Yarp.
And Steven.
Oi! Took what I was going to do.
Just said narp.
Yarp.
And in this episode, we're reviewing the second movie in Edgar Wright's Cornetto trilogy, Hot Fuzz.
Cornetto trilogy. Explain that to me. Break it down.
So in each of the movies,
Reverse
Cornetto
it.
ice cream is featured.
Okay.
And so like in this one, they purchase it from the store.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
in each movie, the Cornetto ice cream
What
is...
you're telling me is this is a cinematic universe.
It is. Each movie, the Cornetto ice cream is different based on the movie. So in Shaun of the Dead, it's red for blood. In this one, it's blue for the police.
yeah.
And then in The World's End, it's green for Alien. So it's like it themes with the movies. But
Interesting.
All three of them, they featured Cornetto ice cream, which was like a snack that Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg loved when they were making Spaced, their TV show they made before Shaun of the Dead.
Oh.
So it all came, and it's just like a little nod that they threw in, and then it became like
A
the
thing,
and that's what they refer to it as because of that.
The Cornetto trilogy.
This is like going around and calling Pixar's library of movies the pizza truck.
You could, yeah.
Cinematic universe.
Pizza Truck Extended EU or something. All right, so let's go around and get some quick reactions real quick. What does everybody think about Hot Fuzz?
I love this movie.
Nice. Speak on that just a little bit.
Timothy Dalton's incredible as a villain. And Edgar Wright. This is actually my first introduction to Edgar Wright.
Okay.
So it has like his, distinct style.
It's very Edgar Wrighty.
It is, yeah.
very.
Steven, what do you think?
I love this film, and every time I watch it, I'm reminded of, oh my God, this is so good. It is so well made.
Like every time I watch it, I'm like, yeah, I remember I like Hot Fuzz, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I love this movie.
I love this
Yeah,
movie.
I like Hot Fuzz a lot. I think it is one of those movies that every time I watch it, I'm kind of similar, but it's a slower build for me. Where it's like by the time I get over the halfway point and closer to the end, I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this movie. Yeah. Okay, so before we get into our deep thoughts on all this,
Spoiler free, but deep.
Yeah, deep but spoiler free. Let's take a minute to thank our patrons.
Alrighty, we want to give a huge shout out to everyone supporting the show, helping us keep the lights on, including such notable personages as Sam, Daniel, Finn, T, Jason, Mark, Travis, Andy, Taylor, Grant, Robert, Sue, Nobody, Ken, Baron, Nick.
Thanks
Brian,
to nobody.
Christian, Brad, Colin, Andrew, Ethan, T-Mac, Nick, Ryan, Lady Palutena, Scott, Tyndall, Matthew, and Allison.
Greatly appreciate all of the support you've
The
given
most
us for over the years.
Fantastic community of wonderful, discerning, brilliant, beautiful,
Yes.
Incredibly attractive
intelligent people.
I'll say it, sharp dressers.
people. Yeah.
There it is, yeah.
A whole lot of them. They look great. All right, on to the plot summary. An overachieving London police sergeant is transferred to a village where the easygoing officers object to his fervor for regulations, all while a string of grisly murders strikes the town.
Yeah, that's about right.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty
That's
on.
not bad. In terms of some of the IMDb summaries we put on the show, like that one's not terrible.
Some of the summaries IMDb has graciously provided us.
Right, yeah. Okay, this movie was released March 14th, 2007, which is just... which I watched Shaun of the Dead before we watched this one.
Oh, yeah.
Or before I watched this one. Because it's the 20-year anniversary. And it made me go, because I follow Edgar Wright on Instagram. We're very close friends. We talk all the time.
yes, definitely.
No big deal. Me
You and Ed.
Him and Jimmy Cams. We just hang out. But he posted, him and Simon Pegg have been doing a bunch of press and screenings in London and stuff for Shaun of the Dead. And I was like, why are they doing that? And it was like, it's the 20-year anniversary. And I went,
So
hello, darkness, my old friend.
I watched some behind the scenes for for Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Like after I watched it, and I didn't realize that Edgar Wright was so dang young.
Oh
Like,
yeah, he
looks
was in
like a
his
kid.
20s. He was in his 20s when he made this.
Baby.
Like,
Yeah.
just blew my mind.
No, yeah, because I don't know his exact age
Yeah,
when he was
I'm
doing
looking
this.
it up. I'm curious now.
But he basically, if I remember correctly, it was like, film school. Mm-hmm. Then they did Spaced pretty shortly after that. And then right after Spaced, they did Shaun of the Dead in 04.
Yeah.
And then this is 07.
He's old. He just looks young, maybe. He's 33.
Okay.
I mean,
That's still young.
He's 33
It's still pretty
now.
No.
No. He's
Oh, back
33 in
then.
2000.
Oh,
He's
okay,
born in
gotcha.
74.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
So I did
still,
the math.
he looks like a
Quick
child,
maths.
though.
Yeah, he does.
He's 50 right
So
now.
as you can tell, this movie was directed by Edgar Wright.
Yes.
Who did Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver, The World's End, Last Night in Soho, which is the only one I haven't seen of his movies.
It's
I heard
interesting.
Last Night in Soho wasn't that great.
It's got like a 7 on most ratings though, so that's pretty good.
I mean,
I've
C's
it's
get
still probably a
degrees.
serviceable film. I just heard
I've
it wasn't
seen
like,
a lot of the
ooh.
behind the scenes of it, and it shows the same attention to detail from what
Yeah.
I can see. But I haven't seen the movie yet. It's the one. It came out in 2021, I want to say.
Yeah.
and that was like just
Yeah,
a weird.
Not a great time for
COVID
films
time.
to come out.
Right, yeah. It wasn't on. It was in my Max queue for the longest, and then they took it off the service like a week before I was going to watch it.
Went back to being HBO because your Max Q just disappeared. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Okay, written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, who they wrote they wrote Spaced, the TV show, but they also wrote Shaun of the Dead and The World's End together. Those are the movies they've collaborated on as far as
Simon
writers.
Pegg's got quite a number of other writing
Oh, yeah.
credits as
Yeah.
well. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, he did the last 2 Star Treks, I think.
He was a
Or maybe he was an
producer
EP
on the last
on
one.
the last.
So
Yeah,
he did
I know
some
he did some writing
he did some
for
writing
them.
for Mission
yeah.
Impossible, right? For a
Yes,
couple of those.
for Ghost Protocol.
I want to say somehow he was
Yeah.
one of the writers or
Something
something
like that.
Yeah.
Either way.
Music by David Arnold. Now get ready for this.
Okay.
Here's his bona fides: Independence Day,
Okay.
Oh,
Casino Royale,
okay.
The World Is Not Enough,
Okay.
and the 1998 U.S. Godzilla.
Oh no! So like, I
was like, wow.
solidly in the action wheelhouse,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but also like Independence Day music is good. Mm-hmm. Hot Fuzz music is really good.
I think Casino Royale's music is good. I don't remember the music from the World
music
Is Not
for
Enough.
Casino Royale's fine.
It's
Oh.
yeah.
I don't
think-
like the Chris Cornell opening
Oh,
song.
get
That's
out!
my-
We have a whole episode where we proved you wrong on that.
That's true. We do.
No,
Gosh.
I brought it down to where you couldn't even put him in the top 5.
Whatever. James Bond, people who aren't James Bond fans just drove off the road, deleted their podcast feed. I'm out. Okay. Starring Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Timothy Dalton, Jim Broadbent, Olivia Colman, and many, many more. There's a lot of people
There
in
is
here.
a who's who of British actors in this.
Well, like,
a lot of
I
familiar
could go on with like
faces.
Bill Nighy and Martin
Yeah.
Freeman, but they were only in like the front and the end. So I was like, I wanted to hit the main
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I mean, Martin Freeman is essentially a cameo level
Right,
of appearance.
Budget was 12 to 16 million US with a box office of 80 million worldwide, 23 million US.
Imagine
Okay,
making this
that is
movie
insane.
with how good this action is and the cuts and
Yeah.
direction and everything like that for $15 million.
Right. Well, and it is a smaller scale movie.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
There's basically no CGI in this.
Well,
Now there is, and you'll
There
notice
is,
it.
but there's a lot of
essentially-
practical
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean, well, it's also one of these things where like the action is really created not because they pulled back and showed you the action. It's because close up, cut, close up, cut, close
Right.
up. Like that's
Yeah.
the action isn't actual action.
they basically like. I mean, there's a couple sections of action where like someone is shooting and they show the same shot in different angles or different distances like 4 or 5 times
Just to punch
make
up.
it to make it feel like there's a lot happening, but it's only one shot.
Or it's
Yeah.
two guys, approaching each other, and it's shot from one face to the other face to the other face. They could not even be in the same room for all you know
Yeah.
at this point because it's such a tight shot.
There's a lot of inspirations to Tony Scott's later films like
Very much.
Domino and stuff I think Man on Fire. Well, that didn't come out before this.
No, Man on Fire.
Had it already come out by now?
Yeah,
07?
Man on Fire was 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they mentioned that. I saw and I watched a little bit of the commentary on this, and Edgar Wright was basically saying that like obviously Bad Boys 2, but like
Point Break.
I mean,
like
this
Tony
is-
Scott
this
and
movie is-
that frantic editing with like the bleach bypass
Yeah.
exposure. They were like, we want to take office work and paperwork and do like that kind of a treatment.
punchy.
So he's like, gosh, he's like sliding the pen across it. You know.
Well, so the thing that I love about this movie so much.
Let's just get into overall thoughts.
Yeah. Is
we're there now.
There's it's kind of one of those films where it's an homage to just absurd action movies from like the late 90s,
for sure,
early 2000s with like a
it
really
touches
like
on the
punchy
80s a little, right?
It does.
Yeah.
But the big thing is that it does it so well, it doesn't feel unoriginal when they do it.
No, yeah.
It feels very genuine, and it doesn't feel like they're just copying something.
Well, it also helps that your lead here is not an Arnold Schwarzenegger or a Keanu Reeves, or he's very much so a satire of an action hero. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
almost
Simon,
of an actual cop more than
Simon Pegg.
Well,
just is not intimidating.
He does
There's nothing about
everything
him
in
that's
his power
intimidating.
to not pick up a gun until he has to.
yeah.
Well, I'm more.
And he's
just,
very by the book.
Yeah.
I'm
too.
more thinking of like, he's not bulked, ripped. This isn't,
no.
the
Yeah.
6'4" dude walking in who benches 250 as his reps every day. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he's
I
just
do
a
that. I don't know
dude.
what you're
Yeah,
talking
whatever. He's just a
Tuesday.
dude.
That's why I wear tank tops all the time.
Yeah. Because I keep bursting through my
I'm
sleeves.
wearing a tank top right now.
No,
Give him a second. Go ahead, Andrew. Flex.
There it is, son.
I'll rip this shirt off right now.
Well, I think too, like in the press, and I want to say like some other stuff, like Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg and the creators, they get kind of defensive when people call this a spoof, because he's like, we're not spoofing anything. This
Yeah.
is its own
it's not
thing.
a spoof.
It
It is
is,
an
yeah.
original.
That's the incorrect
take.
way to think of it.
Yeah.
It's not even I wouldn't even consider it a parody of anything.
It's not. Yeah.
Homage is
It's
the
an-
correct approach.
There are homages, but it's not. It is its own thing.
Well, I mean,
solidly.
it is
yeah.
also a literal homage. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like you had a movie that takes place and you're like, oh, that's the scene from Point Break. Like, the characters discuss the scene from
Yeah.
Point Break or other
Like
action
Bad Boys
films.
2 or
yeah, I
whatever.
mean, they look through, they watch the movie in the movie.
We see the clip.
Yeah, so like, and Michael Bay, they only made $80 million. I guess he didn't get much of a royalty check for that.
Probably not.
Probably not. And I think too, like something that kind of informs, this is a little bit of trivia, but it's like the reason that they started this idea was that they were like, you never see
Like British
action movies with British cops
Yeah.
because we don't even carry guns. They're just like, they're chasing geese.
Stop, or I'll say stop again.
Right. Yeah. It's that level of stuff. So he was like, he wanted to make a movie featuring, British police officers in the same vein as these American, like Bad Boys and stuff.
Which is great. Like, I thought it did a really good job at that, because it also takes kind of like, I'll say, the mundane and banal stuff that happens in, I'll say, like British dramas and like kind of mystery thrillers, and it puts it in that, and then it just puts American U.S. style action on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it really fun, I think.
All through the lens of Edgar Wright's style. You know what I mean? Like
with kind of the small town feel. This is Mayberry in Britain.
Yeah.
But not Mayberry.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But the whole everything about just the random small moments that happen throughout the film are
For the greater good.
and
For
not
the
just
greater
that,
good.
Not just that, but they all for the greater good. But not for just
For the
that.
greater good.
The bit with the swans and stuff like that. Without going spoiler,
Yeah.
but just the random occurrences. Well, you're going to the fair today.
Right. Yeah. It's the little stuff of like, ugh. Yeah, I like this movie a lot. I think, especially since I watched like Shaun of the Dead the night before and then this after, it's always refreshing for me to see how different Simon Pegg is in both those movies.
Yeah.
And Nick Frost is similar in all the movies, well, except for The World's End. He's really different in that one. But like Simon Pegg is like night and day as far as his characters in those two movies. And then he's even different in The World Ends. So like, it's good that there's not like Simon Pegg specifically, I think, doesn't get enough credit for how much range he has
he's not
as an actor.
typecast, yeah.
He can do a lot of stuff. And like, I always love watching him in this because I forget how much he nails that like serious by the book.
no-nonsense.
Yeah,
fill out,
and
fill
how
out your paperwork.
Yeah, just he can't switch it off. Type A, just like and he corrects everybody so much. Like it's just like it's
amazing.
perfect. Yeah.
Well, and there's a couple points towards the end of the film where he just gives up on trying to correct someone.
Yeah.
And you can just tell the
Killing
visible
him.
frustration.
Killing him inside.
yeah.
Well, also, I love to, like you referenced, you get a Simon Pegg movie, you get a Nick Frost movie a lot of times, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think their chemistry carries through just so well.
Right.
But the whole cast, chemistry and their
yeah.
interactions, it feels like a fish out of water, small town, where all these other people have known each other forever. The little interactions that happen in the background, and just the way that the townspeople talk with each other.
Yeah.
Oh, did you get a load of that new sergeant? Yeah, he's going to the store. Check out his arse.
Yeah. It's
Stuff
very much
that,
like a small town.
That
but
just flows all around the characters as they're going through the film.
Yeah.
It's also one of those movies, though, where like Edgar Wright is really good about this. Is like there's no wasted scenes. There's always setup and payoff, setup and payoff.
Yes.
So like a lot of the stuff that you think is just like
Throwaway
kind of,
moments.
Yeah, world building or just like flavor to kind of fill out the
It
town.
always comes back
all
later
comes
on.
back, to something.
It may
at the
not
end.
necessarily be what I would call like a true setup and payoff. Like, oh, he glances at this one thing, and then later that's relevant.
Right.
That happens here as well.
Sure.
But also it's callbacks, right?
Callbacks,
They make
yeah.
the joke earlier, and then it comes back. When the tension's been building, it comes right back and hits you. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think probably one of my favorite, like they have a running joke of there's a swan on the loose just in town. And there are a couple of times where he's doing something very serious, like chasing a criminal or whatever. And then
Yeah.
he runs across the swan and he stops for a
He
second.
has
He
to make the
sees the moment
decision, yeah.
of like, I could get the swan because that's also my job, or I could try and chase the
It's
shoplifter.
The calculus you can
Yeah.
see like him running in his head. Yeah. And it's funny too because the Swan and a bunch of the stuff that they go on call wise is like they interviewed for this movie a bunch of actual British policemen
in small town.
in small towns, and this was the stuff they were like, oh, there's this swan that always gets out, you know, and so they just wrote it down like that's gold, you know, like
That's
that's
awesome.
So I love that a lot of that made it into the movie.
This is like the exact opposite of the prep work for Heat. Where he's like, with like this
Yeah.
or like Training Day.
Yeah, yeah. Like they're with actual mobsters, like having dinner with them, like talking about heists. And here they're like, yeah, this goose gets out all the time.
And let me tell you, if you don't watch out, that thing will bite you.
Yeah,
That's such a
It's-
good difference for American and
Well,
British.
it also
Yeah.
helps that like Training Day. Heat is set in
Los Angeles.
They're both set in Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
both-
yeah.
both set in LA,
Hollywood.
yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
But it's like Los Angeles versus again middle of nowhere England
Britain,
versus
yeah.
being set in London, which is kind of the gag at the start, essentially.
right. Yeah,
It's like, oh, you're coming from London.
Tell us how to do things around here.
I also
We're
love.
becoming Irish right there.
Yeah, a little bit. I can't do
It's
accents
fine.
like that.
It's
yeah.
fine. It did drift very. I love when he first gets like early in the movie when he gets to the town, right, and like all the interactions he has with the townspeople immediately
being introduced.
Like it just makes you like understand how different this place is, you know, and how like
Well, just the opening scene after the first night he's there and he's doing his morning run and everyone's like, "Good morning, Sarge. Good morning," and he's like, he hasn't met a single person.
He doesn't know any of these people. They all know him.
exactly who
They
he
all
is.
know that he's
Yeah.
the new guy.
Yeah.
How would you recognize me? How wouldn't I recognize you? You're the only new person here in the last 5 years. You know? Like,
yeah, there's a lot to like about this movie. I really enjoyed it. If you haven't seen Hot Fuzz, I would definitely recommend it. Would you guys recommend it?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, it earns its rating, right? Because it is rated R.
So, and I'll definitely
Yeah.
say this, like the reason why it took me so long to watch this movie, because I didn't watch it when it first came out, it was one of my friends had seen Shaun of the Dead, and they would not shut up about it. They said it's like one of the greatest movies they've ever seen. They showed me a clip, and I was like, I don't like zombies already, and it just didn't interest me. So then whenever I saw this was the same guy, I was like, I'm not interested in that. So then I just wrote it off for, I'll say like almost 4 years.
Yeah.
And then, someone was like, hey, we're going to put this on. And I watched, I was like, oh, this is like really good.
Right. You kind of realize
Yeah, because it scratches the itch of like everything that I enjoy out of like a good action movie. It also helps that Timothy Dalton is the bad guy.
I was gonna say you get
Fantastic.
This guy's a
Fantastic
pervert
actor.
for Timothy Dalton.
Yeah,
He's gonna love some Timothy
He's such
Dalton.
a fantastic
So
actor.
when we were watching the film, Lauren pulled up on IMDb. Well, what else has he done? And she's like, he did James Bond, and everything else he's done, he's just been a villain.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's just like, heck
He's
yeah.
very good at being a
He
villain.
does such a good job with like anytime he's like in this movie specifically, like he can just say a phrase and he says it in such a way. And he's like breathy when he's saying it, and it's just it makes you suspicious immediately.
I was gonna say that for post spoiler wall, but I will say the tonal shifts that they play with in the movie in the small moments, like when he first goes into the inn and he's talking to the Joyce, I think, the lady.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like just the cuts from like, this is just kind of a regular everyday humorist. Are they, whoa, like what just happened there? And then it pulls back, like the music shifts, the camera pulls in, and then it pulls back just normal, delightful, yada, yada, yada. And then another line happens. You're like, okay, is this weird? Is this me? Is it like, what's happening here? And they play with that throughout the film, and I think they really make it pay off just over and over. It's incredible. If you're being forced to take a long, sad trip out into the country, you might not have enough reception to check out all of our episodes at spoilersintendedpodcast.com. But that's okay, because you can always check us out on any podcast provider and go ahead and download all of our episods in preparation for the loss of reception that will inevitably happen as you are sent out into Bumble, you know what, where? Nowhere.
Unfortunately, if you don't have reception wherever you're going out in the country, Discord will not work for you. But whenever you get back to work and you really want to just kick back and not actually do anything while you're, on the clock, come and join us on Discord. We love to talk and chat about all the new stuff that's coming out.
It's like a little village where we know everybody.
Where everybody knows your name.
We also have Facebook and Instagram. We would love it if you'd follow us and share and like all of our posts over there. It's where we post what we're going to be reviewing coming up. So it's a good time. It's a good hang. Come follow us. All right. We are past the spoiler wall.
We have exited the safety of London. Wait, hold on.
London?
This analogy doesn't work.
London.
And we've traveled
London.
into
They
the
said it like
spoilers.
London, yeah.
Well, because I was realizing if it's dangerous to be where spoilers are, it's really more London than it is the village. But it's also the village. So, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, I'm going to jump into some trivia here.
Okay.
And I want to quiz you guys real quick up at the top.
I wasn't told about a quiz.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't studied it.
I'm good with pop quizzes. Let's go.
That's how pop quizzes work, Steve.
I'm 40.
Okay,
This is BS.
there's 2 Oscar winners that have cameos in this movie. Do you know who they were and what role they played? Did you catch them at all?
Oscar winners.
Oscar
The girl in the police station.
In the police station.
Yeah.
Doris?
Doris. No?
Olivia Colman
Yeah, Olivia Colman.
may have won an Oscar by now, actually. Yes, she has.
I think she
But
has.
she's a main character. I'm talking
okay.
about
All right.
Kate Blanchett and Sir Peter Jackson.
What?
Kate Blanchett is his girlfriend, Janine, who's in the crime scene.
How would you ever know that's
Yeah.
Kate Blanchett?
I recognized her voice, not as Kate Blanchett, but I was like, I know that's someone.
You know
I've
that,
heard
yeah.
that. I've heard that voice. So she's his girlfriend, Janine.
Ex-girlfriend.
Ex-girlfriend. And Peter Jackson is the Santa Claus that stabs him through the hand in the opening scene.
These are very cameo
When they're talking about his most
Yeah.
recent injury.
Yeah.
That is Peter Jackson. Now if you watch it, you see him going, it's like
Yeah.
Peter Jackson.
So Olivia Colman has won Academy Awards, 4 BAFTA Awards, 2 Emmy Awards, 3 Golden Globes.
She's incredible.
Incredible
And
actress.
she's great in this movie, too.
Yeah.
I laughed every time she talked, basically.
I mean, basically everybody put on screen. There's no person who shows up. You're like, oh, it's this person again.
Oh no, yeah, it's a who's who, and that's the thing about Olivia Colman that I think not everybody forgets, but like I'm familiar with more of her work from when she was doing comedy, like Peep Show on what's his name? I can't think of the 2 British comedians. She was on that. She was on this. I think she had like it wasn't The Office. What was she on? There was like a
British
sitcom.
comedians. Ricky Gervais.
Something, but like she did a ton of comedy as well as like the dramatic stuff. So I always think of her as funny Olivia Colman, like she is in this, and then like she's like winning Oscars.
And then she's like, she's Olivia Colman winning
Well,
Oscars.
she's great in The Crown.
Yeah.
She's what else was she in that was recently? But I mean, she's a fantastic actress, and every time I see her in this, I'm like, oh yeah, she's in this.
I know. I did the same thing too. I was like, I forgot she's in this.
Playing just a complete opposite, having fun with it.
Well, because I think when I first saw this, I didn't know who she was. This may have been like the first time I had seen her.
Yeah.
And then now I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, there's so many people in here that I'm like, that's Jim Broadbent. Like, I didn't recognize that in 07 when I first saw it. The first draft of the script included a love interest for Nicholas named Victoria. She was cut from the drafts, but they
I love
moved
this.
a good amount of her dialogue just over to Danny without any changes. No changes. They just took her
fantastic.
dialogue, copy, pasted it, and and like there's so many scenes where he's saying stuff that like now
It's
you're
kind of
like,
like it's a bromance.
yeah,
Well, see,
they just copied it right over, no change.
So watching this, I actually really enjoyed the fact that we have that bromance because we talked about this.
Well,
like
and there's
RRR.
no actual romantic interest in this.
The only interest is the X, and we're moving off from that,
Yeah.
like immediately.
Yeah.
But when we talked about this with RRR, right, where we're like, you just don't get this kind of relationship. And while this one in Hot Fuzz is more one-sided, a little more comedic, it still does have a good through line that kind of hits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you still get that the non one-sided part of it towards the end. Like it just takes a long time for him to kind of like come to terms with like, oh yeah, this guy's my friend.
Right, yeah.
well, and
it
it
takes a
also-
while for that corner to get turned. Yeah.
It pays off too because not the end, but a little before the end, you think he's betrayed him, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh man,
I was like, oh, that's a brutal one,
Right?
Yeah. So Edgar Wright said that they wrote the role of Simon Skinner specifically for Timothy Dalton in mind. And so when they started casting and they were able to sign him as the character, they both shared a thumbs up during his first table read, and they played because they were like, this is perfect. Like we wrote it with Timothy
yeah.
Dalton in mind. Speaking of,
He does such a good job with a little mustache.
I know.
and, like,
Which apparently he hated. He did not want to grow a mustache.
Really?
And they were like, you got to have the mustache. And he's like, all right, I'll do it.
Everybody else has a mustache in this movie. You got to have
Yeah.
one.
So the filming of Angel and Skinner's first meeting at the supermarket was filmed over the course of 2 days. So the conversation was filmed entirely from Timothy Dalton's perspective first. So like, we got you done. You're out of here, Timothy. The next day, early in the morning, they were just going to shoot the conversation from Simon Pegg's side with close-ups. Dalton, to the surprise of everyone, even the crew, showed up early the next morning, ready to go. He wasn't going to be on camera at all. He sat off camera in Skinner's chair and played the role perfectly so that Simon Pegg would have something to work off of.
A true professional.
And Pegg said later it really showed how professional Timothy Dalton was compared
well,
to like,
because he's like a big name.
oh yeah, they did not expect him. It was like,
Yeah.
we got all your shots done that day. Simon was off shooting another scene. We're just going to get his cutaways and
Yeah.
reactions, and he's like, he just showed up unannounced, not on the schedule, and sat there across from him.
man.
I was like, man, Andrew's going to love this one.
all I can think about is with the Rocketeer, I do my own stunts, punches him.
I keep forgetting that he's the bad guy in that.
He's
too.
a really good villain, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. While Nicholas is chasing the shoplifter through the supermarket, Danny is reading the taglines of the action films in the half price bin. He gets to Super Cop, titled Super Cop, Meet the Cop That Can't Be Stopped, when he realizes the chase is on,
Yeah.
right? He throws the DVD back into the bargain bin, where if the viewer watches closely, it lands beside a DVD copy of Shaun of the Dead. But it's called Zombies Party, which was the release title of Shaun of the Dead in certain countries.
Oh, interesting.
And
Okay.
the price tag covers up Simon Pegg's face to keep from breaking the fourth wall. So it's the
so
same.
You can't tell
cover.
that he's a character in the movie. That's smart.
Yeah, and but it
that's
lands
funny.
right there. So people that are watching are like, ah. Anyways, there's a bunch of like trivia, but like the DVD collection of Danny's, that's another last one I'll get to. Then we'll get into our
What a
spoiler
collection,
thoughts.
man.
When they opened the thing, right?
Yeah.
That is made up entirely of Edgar Wright, his brother Oscar Wright, and their friend, also director Joe Cornish's entire DVD collection.
Wow.
They just brought all their DVDs
That's
and
awesome.
said, fill it out. And they did. Okay, let's get into our spoiler-filled thoughts.
Fill it
Anything that
up
we
with
haven't
some
said before that we want to
spoilers.
get into?
I mean, I think you can really go into the interplay, like you said, right? They
Yeah.
set up and they pay off.
Yeah.
So I want to hear what's your best setup and payoff? What hits for you? Because we didn't really go into this. How many times have you seen this film, Ryan?
Probably about 4 or 5.
Andrew?
About 4 times now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've probably seen it close to double that. So
Okay.
Either way, for none of us, this is not a first viewing.
No,
It's
no,
not
no.
saying-
No, yeah.
We're well seasoned in this.
My
right?
favorite is the hotel lady with like the fascist and hag. And
Yeah.
later where she says fascist, he
Well,
says hag.
So Stephen, just correct me if I'm wrong here. The machine gun that she's using is a Sten, isn't it?
That's a great question. That
And
I
which
don't
is a
actually
German
know.
machine
I
gun.
think it is, but I couldn't swear to you
So
that it is.
I always get a laugh every time she yells out fascist and then shoots him with the German
with
machine
a German
gun.
machine gun. Oh yeah. No, but that for me, I laugh every time because it's such a great intro when she's like fascist and he's like pardon me, you know, and it kind of zooms in, and then she's like, a word, and he goes, hag. And it's the way he says it, hag. And she's like, excuse me, you know, he's like, what's number, 8 down.
3 down, yeah.
You know,
She's
and
like,
then at the end,
okay, thank you, dearie.
they say fascist, he says hag.
So I think probably one of my favorite payoffs, and it's like an easy layup because at the beginning, whenever Danny's basically asking him all this stuff, he's like, "Did you ever jump through the air and shoot 2 guns at the same time?"
They hit all of these,
and,
yeah.
and that entire row of just conversation. And because like in your mind that they're going to have to do this somewhere later on in the film, because you don't ask these questions that are so specific.
Well, it works so well too because Danny's obsessed with the action cop film, action movie style stuff, and this is an homage to those action movies, and they can do all these moments, the double dive with dual wielding pistols, shooting out of each side of the car in the car chase, like all these things can be done in the flow of just the plot. It just works. It just, you don't have to question it.
And the thing that I love about how this movie plays out is the first half, is kind of like a suspense thriller, a little bit of a mystery in there, but it's a pretty like boilerplate cop, him trying to figure out all the puzzle pieces. And then whenever it flips, every dialogue that Simon Pegg has is now he's much throatier and deeper.
Yeah, he's an action hero.
Yeah, he's an action hero now. And then you get to do all the fun stuff that you've been waiting for this entire time because you're like, oh man, I love Point Break. Oh man, I love Bad Boys 2. I want to see that in this. And you get to see every single bit. And it all feels really genuine. It never feels like this is like, oh yeah, it's going to do this now.
Right, yeah.
So what cracks me up all the time is when, like the internet meme gif of Danny loading the shotgun. Shame. So I always forget where that moment actually lands, and then when it's the fight in the supermarket, when he's like, I put the trolley boy in the chest. Oh, did you say something?
Say a one-liner on your way?
She's like, oh, you put him on ice. No, I didn't even think of it at the time. It's shame.
Yeah.
Like there's so many moments in this movie that just kind of hit.
I think it's because it's really well written.
It's really well written.
It's really tight.
Yeah. There's no a lot of people I know complain about this movie because it is kind of a slow burn compared to an actual action movie.
I mean, sure.
Right? Well, because
you get literally 25 minutes of just action
at the end.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think honestly a lot because some of my friends don't like this movie, and it's crazy. Mostly because again,
I would say divorce them. That's not how friends work. Unfriend them.
It's when we went to see it in the theater. Well, and
they were expecting an action.
They were expecting an action movie.
Yeah,
and then it's really definitively not at the front.
Who rolls up on a movie starring Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and says, "Yeah, this is gonna be a blow 'em up."
I mean,
action
hey,
movie.
to be fair, like
the poster, I don't know, the trailer.
But still, like.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing. I don't know what marketing they saw. Like, I was watching it because I loved Shaun of the Dead.
Right, yeah.
Which, I'm not going to get into any spoilers for Shaun of the Dead, but like the twist in this movie, right, really takes place 3/4. It kicks off the third act.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you realize that the council is like, oh, the NWA, y'all are just killing people because they had a bad house and because, you realize it's so much more mundane than
This is incredibly just insane. Like it in a lot of ways it makes it more evil.
They're like
it's so
because
trivial and they just do it.
The worst HOA.
They are what HOAs dream to be. Yeah. Yes.
But that twist of what is really happening happens like 3/4 the way through. I would say in Shaun of the Dead it happens like 1/4 of the way in. Mm-hmm. And then it's like now we explore. So I get some people's complaints if you came into it with the wrong expectations.
To me, that just tells me that those people didn't watch enough murder mystery films or heist films where there's always the big final third reveal of this happened, either earlier in the movie or this is the twist that you don't see coming. Like that's what I expect, and I feel like if you say, okay, well, maybe it's a little slow, it's not action enough. I think the moments of like what you're talking about with the fascist hag, where
that's just kind of lost on them.
Yeah.
It's not even that. Like the
Well,
way
that seems mean.
Well,
no, I agree.
I didn't intend it that way.
You're a very mean person.
Stick to your guns.
You're cruel. You're terrible.
But the way that the camera work changes, the music changes,
Yes.
and the pace and feel of the film,
The filmmaking
accelerates.
techniques.
Like it's like going
Yeah.
from
and
music that's
that
80 BPM
engages
to
you.
120, and you can feel the jump forward.
But on top of that, back to Andrew's point about people being plebs, is
Pearls before swine.
it's a direct quote. Sorry, I'm just direct quoting Andrew. No, it's for me. I can see the Edgar Wright filmmaking touches and the care and like I know if there's a YouTube channel called Every Frame a Painting. If no one's checked it out, please check them out. They have great videos.
They have a whole great video on just Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright. They have one on Jackie Chan. They're worth watching. But with
Sadly, I
Edgar,
don't think they make stuff
They
anymore.
don't make.
They
things
just came
anymore.
back.
But what did they? Oh,
Wait,
crap.
oh my
they
gosh.
have one. I think it's like coming. It's not out yet, but they made
So, like,
a
borderline-
post.
Sign up for Patreon again.
Borderline. That channel is why
We
wanted to do this
the
podcast.
podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew and I
yeah.
would watch his videos and talk about like this is so,
So
like
good.
clever and
Yeah.
smart and just like
Love that channel. Anyways, he has a video on Edgar Wright, and he breaks down the scene, in this movie from the transition between London to Somerset. What's it called?
Sanford.
Sanford.
Yeah.
That is one of the best sequences. Again, zero dialogue.
Right.
Just cuts. Just
You see a cell phone losing
the
signal.
signal.
You see the road signs go more rural as he's going.
The taxi signs change.
change.
Yeah.
The train platform becomes lonely and he's by himself in the dark.
And it's just
waiting
him
for
and
a
his
train.
plant.
Yeah.
And it's like
that sequence
Japanese
hits
peace
so
lily.
well.
Thank you very much.
It's still a plant.
It's still a plant.
Like a Japanese peace lily is not a plant. It's a Japanese
It's a
peace
mineral.
lily.
Wait, hold on. What?
It's a mammal. What?
Oh God.
Oh no. But that to me, that stuff is not lost on me. Where I think if someone doesn't have an appreciation for like filmmaking
yeah.
and that kind and editing
It
techniques,
definitely can probably be even honestly kind of overwhelming as well if you're not
bit.
used to that kind of filmmaking.
Man,
Right,
every
yeah.
time that sequence hits, that for me is the moment in the film I'm like, God, this is so well made.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is like this is such a good show don't tell. It tells you everything you ever needed to know about this situation. As someone who has never been to England,
yeah.
I know exactly what's happening here and how this would feel and like the emotions that play out. Just
there's so many scenes too, and again, this kind of goes back to how tightly it's written. Where like, because Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, I think it said they spent 18 months on the first draft.
Oh, wow.
Now Edgar Wright did a film in college that was like roughly the same
Is it
idea,
like Death Watch?
something like that.
Something
yeah.
like-
yeah, Death something. I think maybe Watch.
Yeah.
But it's way more comedy. It's way obviously lower budget, but it's the idea. And that one, the serial killer is obsessed with eating cereal. Like there's a whole like
Yeah.
it's a bit goofy.
Yeah.
But the idea is to say this was shot in Edgar Wright's hometown, and
Yeah.
so was that movie because it was like I know these streets, this little town. That's where the inspiration came from. But with like the tightness of how it was written. At the front when the Martin Freeman is telling him, we need to choke this up the ladder. Then Steve Coogan comes out.
I was literally about to talk about
he, like,
this.
does
Is
that,
one
and
of
he's
my
like,
favorite jokes.
We can bring him down all the way. All right, come in. Like,
You're just waiting in a line.
well, we'll see what the boys have
That's
to
what I
say.
was gonna say. The twist in how well it's written is like, let's see what the boys think. They open up, and he's like popping the little popper, and it says, "Congratulations,
Yeah.
we'll miss you." And you're like, that's so quickly written, and you don't have to have a scene where he's interacting with the
Yeah.
boys. You don't need all this expository dialogue. It tells you everything right there. That they're sick of your 400% arrest rate.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
So that sequence and the way they introduce it, where it's like, "How's the hand? Bit stiff." So how's the hand? Bit stiff.
Yeah.
So how's that way that hits in the same way?
'cause
that
I think
the
when
Spider-Verse.
The third guy comes in. He says, "Hand still stiff."
yeah.
Because he heard it from outside the door.
But like that hits in the same way that the Spider-Verse backstory introductions hits, where they understand this is a piece of exposition we need to put out there.
Yeah.
But the way they put out there, you hear the same thing 3 and 4 times, but it's still hits because it builds on itself, the way it creates.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and it's really the comedic timing as well, because Martin Freeman's the one that's talking to him first, and he's like, "Oh, you want to take this up? Okay," and then immediately cuts to him coming in, and then he's like, "Oh, you want me to get the chief of police,
Chief Inspector, yeah.
Are you sure? Yeah, okay, yeah," and then immediately
Just straight through the door, yeah.
But even like that scene that in another director's hands would be still fine and funny taken from the page. Edgar Wright adds so many kinetic sound effects. Like when he picks up the phone, Martin Freeman's like, it comes up to his face and he's like, come on in. And then Steve Coogan slides into frame. So it's just a shot of blinds and then his head comes in. And it's just, that's the Edgar Wright isms that elevate it from the page to like something more. And that's why I'm very frustrated when I watch Ant-Man, because he was supposed to direct Ant-Man, did all the pre-pro for Ant-Man.
And he just didn't.
And then Peyton Reed, who directed 28 Dresses, got to do Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And you can see the DNA of what could have been an Edgar Wright movie, but you don't quite have the execution.
You don't have the punch,
Yeah. And that's always been like...
Well, and the thing with Edgar Wright films is all of his movies really feel tactile.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many small cuts and the sound effects and sound design is fantastic.
Yeah.
And that really just keeps you engaged as you're watching. And I definitely understand how if someone was watching this or never seen an Edgar Wright film before and they didn't have that kind of interest in filmmaking
or appreciation
for it, then it could be very overwhelming because there's so much going on.
Especially in this one.
Yeah.
A lot of his movies are, but this one especially has a lot.
It's a lot.
Happening fast.
Well, even at the end, like when they're going through all the action sequences, like one shooting sequence is like
a ton of
30
cuts.
or 40 cuts. Where it's like,
on this rewatch, I actually paused it and slowed it down on a few of the action sequences because it was so much.
It was a lot.
And not because I couldn't digest it. I wanted to figure out like, so what was motivating these cuts? Why did he do these? And so I think secretly, some of it was they were trying to hide the fact that Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are not actual action stars. Because for example, the diving in with the two guns, there's like 4 cuts on their way to the ground and the cutaways on top of that. And I was like, why did they cut? And if you slow it down, you can see that they clearly jumped in on like mattresses or whatever, like 100 times. And they get like wide shot, tight shot. And then when they land, it's just them like laying on the floor real quick, and I was like, but it's cut together so well that like if you're watching it at full speed, you see that there's a cut, but it transfers fine. The motion works, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of scenes that are very dense with cuts. Yeah. But like when you actually break them down, it all makes motion sense. So you're never like disoriented and like where are they facing?
Has a cut where they come in from the right and the cut changes the direction and it ruins your flow.
Nothing ever.
I mean, his blocking is always really good.
Always good.
Yeah.
I do think Edgar Wright's style, it would be very polarizing. Like,
for sure.
If it hits with you and it resonates, you're 100% in.
Yeah.
If it just rubs you the wrong way,
you're out.
That's the whole film. But, like, sorry, there's
honestly,
no avoiding it.
You could almost say that about any really big name director.
Yeah,
right?
like if you don't like Martin Scorsese,
right?
I mean,
he has a very specific
you're just
style.
stuck with it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Like David Lynch, even Steven Spielberg, like they have a very specific style. Like Steven Spielberg,
James Cameron, put him in the water.
Put him in the water, Jimmy Cams.
If you don't like the water, don't watch a James Cameron film.
Most of the people I see complain about Spielberg complain about him being like basic. Like it's just fine.
It's very serviceable.
But to me, it's artfully done and masterfully executed. You know what I mean?
Because he has like those really good like kind of not sweeping shots. He like the zoom ins.
He does the oneers. The oneers that last forever. Yeah. So I like.
Who
Steven
doesn't
Spielberg.
do the oneers that last forever? Edgar Wright.
Well,
not usually.
That or Zack Snyder.
No.
His oneer is a slow motion shot that takes 14 minutes.
It should be.
This is a 3-second shot that's stretched out for 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
It's an accidental oneer because he slowed it down to 1,000%.
They're talking about longest oneers in cinema, and Zack Snyder's like, "What about me?" He's like, "Bro, that's like 12 seconds of film."
Yeah, come on, guy. But for me, the fun part too is when that twist happens and you see the whole group, the greater good, the greater good.
Which it gets really unhinged at that moment.
It quickly goes. And he's like, "You're coming with it," and I'm like, "No, you're coming with us." And you're like, "Oh no!" But the moment when Danny stabs him, at the end of that, I was like, "Dang." Every time I always forget. Like, then when he opens the trunk and he's just looking at
Staring at him.
and he's got the ketchup packet, which is again a good setup and a payoff. You know? It's always fun for me to see that twist. And then like he leaves. He's at that gas station on his way back to London. He sees the bargain bin. He sees Bad Boys 2 and Point Break right next to each other. And he's like, I'm going back.
Well, so
can I help you? No, I have to do
I
this
also
alone.
love-
What a good line.
Yeah.
That convenience store clerk's like, what's wrong with this person?
What? I
I'm not
also
getting paid enough for this.
love the Andes.
The Andes
Oh, yeah.
are
So
amazing.
I think one of my favorite things about the film is I'm glad that the rest of the police station is not in on it.
Oh yeah,
They're all actually want to be good people. They just don't care.
Yeah, they're just in a small town. They don't care. But when there is something to care about, they're like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Right. And I love the evolution of that one officer who doesn't know how to handle a scene. You know, he's like, what should I do? And then at the end, he's like calling the shots, like, we're going to the grocery store, go in the front. And, you know,
Simon Pegg's like,
Pegg's
what he
like,
said.
Well,
Yeah.
again, it's the throwback, right? Because that's
Yeah.
every sequence. What should we do? Oh, okay. Well, what he said, and they throw it right back at you,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
hits. And
Well,
then,
and then-
even the end sequence, almost the end sequence. This does a bit of a false ending to it, but when they're in the model village,
Yeah.
with the press or everything else, and there's that guy, man. He's just talking to the press. My perfect
So,
Sunday.
yeah, he's just leading off with that. It's like, wow. I do love too the deep sea mine or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
The setup and the payoff of that. They have to, that one cop that has to interpret. That's another story from police officers. The
Oh,
things
is
they
it?
got where they were like, we had to have this guy from the forest come with us because we couldn't understand this dude.
Well, like that, everything about that farmer is just
Yeah.
great. He says he got a permit for this gun. It's like, what do you mean this gun?
Yeah.
And then you have like the entire armory sequence.
so,
which,
Yeah.
it's the same. It's like the same 3 shots of the lights coming
it
on the
is.
guns, just
Yeah.
played over like 5 times.
Yeah, but then when they he hits the freaking
I was there.
and everyone
Boom.
zooms in and they're all like, oh, and you hear tick tock tick tick tock tick, and they all just get out. But at the end there, when it like the guy comes out of nowhere and then he makes the joke with Olivia Colman's character. Simon Pegg does. I can't remember what he says to her, but it's something like, I bet you like men doing whatever. It's like, oh, he's joking around, you know?
Yeah, oh,
he's
yeah.
coming around. Angel's
like,
coming around.
Well, he says like something about manpower.
That's what it is,
He's like,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, well, we're not supposed to say it. He's like, oh, I bet you could handle some manpower or something like that. Yeah.
and she's
Yeah.
like, look at him. Oh. Then the when the freaking bomb
The
goes off,
neighborhood watch guy
you're
comes
like,
out. Yeah.
Wow. Sorry, what were you gonna say? I was about to.
Oh no, I was going to
pivot
say
something else.
I like at the end too that obviously like you think Danny gets shot and dies,
Right.
Right. Yeah.
which is a good little fake out
Yeah.
whenever they go to his mom's grave. But I love that they never truly revealed that if she was killed because of her husband, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
kind of relatively implied.
Oh yeah,
Just
yeah.
I mean, they borderline stated outright that she like. So from the inspector's perspective and from Danny's perspective, she committed suicide over the grief of it,
Yes.
the fact that they failed.
Yeah.
So like, I don't necessarily know that we say, oh, he was just evil the whole time. I kind of prefer it as this was what flipped the switch,
This
and
is
then
what
it's just
drove
like
him to it,
you're
yeah. Yeah.
absolutely, you have gone. Like she went off the deep end over basically nothing. You went off the deep end off of just what the heck, man.
Yeah.
Double down, triple down on any moment.
Yeah.
The cuts of whenever they have the meetings, and it's like, oh, little announcements. Oh, such as, she's had twins, and then it's like, and then the neighborhood watch guy comes in like, we've been revisited by the blight, the plague of this town, and like Simon Pegg's starting to lean forward, like, oh, what's going on here? And then
This
it
is
flips
it.
up, and it's the golden statue, man, the living statue. She's just like,
And then when he sees him in the catacombs,
Yeah.
he looks alive, and I'm like, is he okay?
yeah, it looks like he's still just being the statue.
Yeah, and he like stays on him for a minute and then just leaves. I got to shout out because we're talking about like the Cornetto trilogy, right? We see him buy the Cornetto ice cream like a couple times in the shop in this one. Another hallmark of the Cornetto trilogy started in Shaun of the Dead with jumping over the fences.
Oh,
and
yeah.
in Shaun of the Dead, it's played for comedy because Simon Pegg can't make it over
Can't
the
do it,
fence.
yeah.
And then in this one, he just flips and stuff, and then Danny eats it. And then in The World's End, they have like a whole nother gag, but it's the same kind of setup
Yeah.
with like the row of fences or whatever. So I wanted to call that out. That it's fun when you watch them together to see like it's an identical shot, just different color fences.
Also, I like that shot too because we're not only kind of going into the idea of, oh, he's a really good cop.
Right.
But also, this is the super strict by the rules regulations guys. What, you never taken a shortcut before? And then it just pops, boom. And it's just like, okay, that was different. We touched on the action star.
He's cutting loose a little.
Yeah. Letting it show a little here.
Well, speaking of, Shaun of the Dead or the Cornetto trilogy, we don't really have any direct plans to go ahead and do all three. But if you do want us to review them,
let us know.
Let us know on Discord or Facebook or whatever.
I've never seen The World's End.
I've never seen Shaun of the Dead or World's End.
I haven't seen Shaun of the Dead in a long time.
I would say that The World's End is probably my least favorite of the three. It's generally considered the weakest of the three.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because the first two are so solid, more so than it's really bad, if that makes sense.
The bar was set too high.
Yeah. It's like you have Alien and Aliens, which are two genre-defining masterpieces.
Of two different genres.
Anything else that comes after those two films is not going to be better than those two films.
The thing I appreciate about Shaun of the Dead is it feels scrappier. Because it was lower budget and it was like, whatever.
Lower budget. This is like $14 million.
But it
Disney over here is like, you could make a movie for less than $100 million.
It's a totally different.
Bollywood films were made for less than this.
I know.
Right? Yeah, I mean, Godzilla -1 is over here like, I wish we had a $15 million
Yeah, I'd give anything for that. But like Shaun of the Dead is completely different from Hot Fuzz. You can still see the DNA.
Yeah, of course.
You can still see Edgar Wright, but it's like, it's more of a spoof of like George Romero's zombie movies, like, Night of the Living Dead and like Day of the Dead or not Day. Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead. It's literally shot. It's right there in the title.
Like The World's End is just like a different. It's still very funny and it's still very good. It's just a different movie. So I'll stress this since you haven't seen either side of this trilogy. Don't go into it expecting another Hot Fuzz.
Oh, I'm not.
You know what I'm saying? It's a different. It's kind of like Scott Pilgrim or Baby Driver. They're very different.
And that's the thing is like, Baby Driver is one of those where there are some really great moments in the movie, but I don't really like the movie as a whole.
So I really like it, but I agree. It's more of like
I think it's because Kevin Spacey, I just don't really like him as an actor, and now he's just really creepy, so that makes it even worse.
Well, he was already creepy. Just you thought he was acting, and then you found out it was real. And you're like,
that's it. Maybe I used to think he was a great actor at being creepy.
He's just being himself.
You know what I mean? Like I just thought, hey, this guy's nailing it at being a weirdo. It's like, oh no,
he's just really
This is like when you learn more about Randy Quaid. You're like, man, this guy can really act and insane. No, he's actually insane. Okay.
Okay.
He just
art imitates life.
He thought Independence Day was actually happening.
Yeah. What do you mean we're rolling? But yeah, if you want us to review the whole trilogy, reviewing Shaun of the Dead and The World's End.
Hit us up, Discord, socials. Let us know. Because, I don't need much of an excuse. But again, like I said, I've never seen World's End. So I'll pose this for you, right?
Yeah.
So Shaun of the Dead has a really good premise to draw on with George Romero. Hot Fuzz obviously has a wealth of stuff to pull from.
Yeah.
I'm assuming World End is kind of pulling on like the alien disaster films-esque. Or like a end of, just kind of your apocalyptic end of the world type, just going by the title and what I can remember of the trailer.
Yeah.
Your meteor is coming, aliens are invading, that type of thing. So I almost wondered, do you think maybe it's a little weaker just because maybe the genre
is not
have
as strong
of an example to pull from?
That's the issue.
Without
and this is me having not seen it in several years.
Right.
It's the one I've seen the least.
Without being able to like mobilize, the American military to fly F-16s into a giant CGI ship or whatever.
It's really well executed and it's funny, but I think it's of the three, it has the weakest premise in terms of like Shaun of the Dead is an easy layup. It's like,
zombie movies are just
and this is again 2004, so this is pre-Walking Dead, pre-28 Days Later, this is really pulling from the Romero films from the 70s on Shaun of the Dead. It's like what they were pulling from. And if you've seen those, like I have 100 times, you get a lot of the in jokes.
Yeah.
That like Andrew, you won't get.
I won't get.
But there's enough in it to stand on its own, right? Hot Fuzz, like maybe if you've never seen a Tony Scott movie or Bad Boys or Point Break, you might not like it as much.
But
I
the
guess
thing is, they show you. See, that's what I get with this. Is they hand you what the material they're playing with in the film.
Yeah, because I really think that the only time that you kind of lose it a little bit is like a Tony Scott film, like Man of Fire or something like that.
Yeah, with that
to where
editing.
that editing style. But even then, like
if you haven't seen that,
if you watched anything like Born Identity or whatever before this, like you're still going to have that same style
a pretty
of film.
good understanding of how this is working.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say that like to the point in Hot Fuzz, like you have the Bad Boys 360 slow-mo shot they see, and then they do it. Thing. They don't have that in like Shaun of the Dead because they couldn't get the rights to the movie.
Yeah, of course,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then
Michael Bay's like, whatever, man, give me $1.
In the World's End, yeah, exactly. In the World's End, I just don't think they had as many direct comparisons.
Right.
But it's still. It's a good movie. It's just when you compare it to the three, it would be third place. I think.
Of course. Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, coming in behind a Hot Fuzz or a Shaun of the Dead is pretty respectable finishing, right?
Exactly.
It's like, oh no, you only won silver because Usain Bolt was in the race.
Well, and I think too.
I'm sorry,
like when they did this movie, people didn't understand there was going to be a Cornetto trilogy. And then when they saw the Cornetto ice cream, they're like, oh yeah, he's kind of doing that. And then when Edgar Wright started talking about finishing the Cornetto trilogy, everybody's like, oh, the third one's gonna, and I think it had a lot of that going against it too. It's
gonna have the big payoff or tie it together. What cracks me up is I've heard the Cornetto trilogy. I've seen it spelled out. I know that it relates this somehow. Until you said it's the ice cream, I still had no idea what the
I was like, is there an actor in there that's Cornetto?
Right? I don't like. Is this a specific? Is this him, Edgar Wright? Like he named his style or something? Like I don't understand.
No, that's. The problem I had when I first heard it referred to that is I was like, what are they referencing? And I think too the other thing with The World's End is it came out after Scott Pilgrim because Scott Pilgrim was 2010, World's End was 2013. So I think it was like Scott Pilgrim did so many things.
World's End have Emma?
It had Rosamund Pike in it. She's
Emma
the girl.
Watson?
Emma Watson? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
It had Rosamund Pike in it.
Yeah, Rosamund Pike's in it.
That's actually That's
actually kind of surprising.
The only redeeming part.
Martin Freeman's in that one a lot. He's really
shot
good in
in
The World's End. But like what I was trying to say is that like I think with Scott Pilgrim, it was so visually different, because it was based on a comic book that you have like the big words,
the big cow, and
Then to go from that back to more like grounded filmmaking, I think also for some people didn't help it because it's like we went from Hot Fuzz to Scott Pilgrim.
It felt like we were escalating and escalating.
Going from Hot Fuzz to Scott Pilgrim feels like an evolution,
right?
And then you go back down to something a little bit more subdued.
It almost feels like you need to evolve from like Hot Fuzz into Scott Pilgrim into like Bullet Train or something.
Yeah,
like that almost feels like the natural track of the way it was done or something. But then instead you got this.
Which again, whatever.
Yeah.
If you want us to review it, let us know.
Yeah, we talked a lot about.
I'm gonna watch it regardless because usually when I watch one of these, I watch all three because I'm just used to it.
Well, you're already 2 for 3, so
right. So why not? All right. Before we go, we got to talk about our Patreon.
For just $1 a month, you can get access to all of our bonus content, bonus commentaries, and all those sorts of things. Guaranteed 1 episode a month.
Patreon picks polls where we put up a themed voting. And you can help dictate what we'll review.
Yeah.
Patrons get early access to those episodes before they make it to the main feed, so you can even shape the course of what we review.
Of history. Let's not sugarcoat it. Of history.
Everything you do is history, Ryan. Come on now.
Oh, is that good or bad?
Just makes me feel
I'm making a mark. They're all bad marks.
I'm making a mark.
All right. That sounds like all the time we have. So as always, follow us on social, leave us a review wherever you're listening now, and share us with a friend. Until next time, I'm Ryan.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Steven.
And every spoiler was intended.